I've got so many thoughts. Anyway, we'll move on. On that note, yeah, exactly. On that note, in the spirit of other people sharing their ideas and thoughts, the next half of this show will be precisely that. So there's a QR code going up now. Here it is. Please ask a question, and we'll be back in 20 minutes, I think.
I think so. Yeah.
I believe it's 20 minutes. To field some questions. Okay. All right. Yay. Hello everyone, we're back. I've had such a fun time reading your questions. I mean, sadly, there's no way we could get through all of them. There are hundreds of them, so there's no way. But whoever sent in anonymously, do you think Keir Starmer is a dickhead? Thank you. That was great. That really made my day. So we've had a range of questions from stuff about economics and about taxation, and we've had stuff about culture wars, and we've had stuff about your own personal journey. So I'm going to try and do a little bit of all of them. So let's just start with one that's a bit more personal. Do you still think that trading was the right career choice for you?
I love trading. I love trading. The thing about trading, and I want to caveat with that I think trading is phenomenally dangerous, because I know a lot of people are being sort of dragged into dangerous behaviours. But the thing that I love about trading is a bit like maths. So at high school, I was quite good at English as well as maths. And the reason I chose maths is because I got an E in my William Blake paper, right? And I got an A in everything else, right? And I just remembered, if one fucker doesn't like your essay, you're fucked. But in maths, you put that right answer down, there's nothing they can say to you. You know what I mean? So and trading is like that. The most frustrating thing that I get now is people say, Gary, yeah, your predictions were right about COVID, but you were right for the wrong reasons. Mm-hmm. And now your analysis is not right. Traders never say that. And I think there's a beauty of maths, and the beauty of trading, which is it protects people like me, who are people who are from working class backgrounds and have no cultural capital, but have a good track record of being right. But I also just love that relentless pursuit of being right. I love that because, in media, these people write articles, they don't give a fuck. They just want to get clicks. They don't give a fuck.
Right, Gary. I didn't tell you to do your job.
Not you, of course, but and these politicians, they just want to get votes, and these academics, they just want to write papers. And of course, look, if you read the book, you'll see, basically trading, drew me into a pretty bad depression. It's a horribly toxic place. But trading itself, I do think it's important that we have people in this world that try very, 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 very hard to be correct. And I think, if our politicians and our journalists were in situations like our traders are in, where if they're wrong, they're going to lose £1 million, we'd get much better fucking politicians.
Sorry, I just had another very funny one there, which is, when you are PM, Gary, will we be able to vape in the bogs?
Vape in the bogs?
I love you guys, this is great. Can you respond to the argument that inequality is a byproduct of global systems like tech monopolies or financialization, and it cannot be rebalanced by taxation?
If you have very, very high levels of wealth tax, right, what I want is to make it impossible for one person to really aggressively hoard wealth over a long period of time. So I think if you have very aggressive wealth taxes, it will obviously make inequality much lower. I want to make it clear, I am not, like the Portuguese waiter, a communist, right? I don't want there to be no inequality, because I want you guys and your kids to live in a world where if you do work really, really hard and do something really, really amazing, you can make quite a bit of money and have a nice life. I want that. But inequality can be higher or it can be lower. And, technological changes can affect that, but taxation changes also can affect that. I'm not trying to create a utopia. I'm trying to stop collapse. And, I think we can talk about building the perfect economic system when we are not on the edge of a cliff. You know what I mean? Let's stop the ship from going down. Sometimes I feel we're on the Titanic and we're about to hit the iceberg, and like someone turns around and says to me, "Do you think like ships are not the ideal form of transatlantic?" Like, and it's like, well, yeah, you know, I heard some guys going to invent the plane, but for now, let's just not hit the iceberg. Yeah, shit's serious, and you know, we can talk about these big picture stuff, but like, you will see what's happening, and this is going to get worse, and we need to deal with the emergency first, and then we can sort out the more ideological perfectionist things once things are a little bit better.
Well, speaking of icebergs, someone has asked, what do you think will happen in the economy if Reform win, and do you think they have a reasonable chance of winning?
I think they will win.
You think they will win?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, betting market has 50%, and I think it's actually more likely than that, because I think the economy will get worse. It's hard to predict what they will do on the economy. They've got lots of different... they're going to cut taxes on the rich, almost certainly, and that will probably... I mean, really, if you want to know that, it's not the perfect predictor. You just want to look at Trump and the States. Really. Obviously, they're not exactly the same, but it's that kind of thing, right? They're going to cut taxes on the rich. Yeah, I think living standards will fall. Yeah, I think they will. But then the problem you have then, this is quite alarmist, but it's kind of obvious what happens then, right? And you're seeing it with Trump, which is when his policies don't improve living standards, the obvious political move is to double down and say this is because our political opponents, you know, the courts, the Democrats, or Labour, or fucking leftist podcasters are like blocking us from doing what we want to do on immigrants, you know? Like, you know, first you ban legal immigration, right? You leave the European Court of Human Rights, and then there's no more illegal immigration. And then you say, well, actually, illegal immigration was only 2% of migration. The problem is actually legal migration. Okay, and then you ban legal migration. And then you say, well, that doesn't improve living standards. So then you say, well, obviously that didn't work because so much migration has already happened. So then you start deporting recent migrants, right? And, you know, and I think, I'm reluctant to say this, right, but the obvious next step after that is Muslims, isn't it? I'm sorry to say that, but like, it's hard for me to look at the way Muslims are spoken about in the press and not be reminded of what happened in Nazi Germany. Like, you aggressively pointing out this one group is the bad guys, and like, if it's going to slide in that direction, right? It's going to slide in that direction. That's my concern. That's my concern, and I'm very worried about that. But I think if you want to stop that, you need to build an alternative story. You know, you do need to have an alternative story, and I think that is the most important thing. As long as there is no alternative story on the table, it's going to slide that way. But you know what? I'm making a documentary with Channel 4 at the moment, and we reached out to Reform, and we were like, we want to talk to somebody about your economic policy. Who's in charge of economic policy? And they came back and they said no one.
Oh.
They don't have a guy in charge of economic policy.
Okay. I mean, that's worse, isn't it?
Well, you can't be attacked if you don't have a policy.
Yeah, but it also means that they will go to the people.
Listen, this is the game, right? It's about salience. I did a video on salience a couple of weeks ago, right, which is about what is spoken about in the press, right? The far right have one clear strategy. They do not want the economy to be spoken about in the press. They want immigration and refugees to be spoken about in the press.
Fair.
So why have an economic policy spokesperson? Because you don't want anyone to speak about that.
I suppose the concern is, and as soon as I even started thinking this sentence, I realised how naive I am, because I thought, yes, but then no, when they get the mandate, then we won't be able to say, but you said in the manifesto that. Which is like never happens anyway. I mean, every political party goes back on their manifesto, but, you know, it's nice to imagine it. Just sticking on this, you know, the far right and their surge. On the 27th of September, Tommy Robinson will be here in Newcastle with his supporters. What would you say to people too scared to counter-protest?
Listen, when I said, you know, don't point at people and call them dickheads, I didn't say don't counter-protest. I would never say that. I wouldn't say don't counter-protest. If you're scared and you don't feel safe, like, you don't have an obligation to counter-protest. I would never tell anyone that they have an obligation to. But, you know, I'm not like, I don't have like a background in the left, so I'm not the guy that like knows how to protest safely. I guess the obvious thing is go in groups, stay in your groups. You know, these protests, people don't know, they normally have what's called a black bloc, which is people who are all dressed in black, and these are people who are there to fight. You know, don't hang around with those guys. You know, it's like simple as that. You know, I know there was violence at the rally in London. You know, if you're careful and you stay away from what looks like violence, just, you know, be alert. Keep your eyes and ears open. Stay away from violence. It's important counter-protesters go. I don't want to be like misconstrued as what I'm saying is don't counter-protest. It's important counter-protesters go. I think it's more about what energy you're sending out when you're there. Like, you know, are we building something or are we destroying something? But really, to be honest, I think the work on this is not going to be done at the protest. It's going to be done in the pub, and it's going to be done at work, and it's going to be done at the football. It's going to be done on the weekend with your mates. You know, that is, the protest is the protest, you know, and that's going to happen. You can't stop it. But all of you here will have mates going to that protest, and it's how you speak to them in your free time. You know what I mean? When I say, you know, those are your opportunities, really. The protest is it's like a spectacle. But what's important, I think, is how you interact with people in your day-to-day lives.
So this question, and I think, you know, gets to one of the anxieties we have. So the immigration fear is not all economic. You know, you were talking about earlier about like 3 years ago, 4 years ago, those two words weren't put together. But it's these other issues around crime, sexual violence as well.
Yeah.
Can an economic point ever counter that? You know, you were saying earlier about reform, they want to be quiet on the economy because they just want to push one thing. But at the same time, we need to have an argument here. So how do we square that circle?
I mean, this is where it comes back to skilled storytelling, all right? Napoleon said, trying to get more Napoleon quotes into these things. A man does not get himself killed for a petty distinction or 6 pence a day. You must speak to the soul in order to electrify him. And I think, you know, when the far right does talk about things like sexual violence, it's incredibly emotive, right? And people get passionate. What keeps me up at night and why I fucking work too hard is because I'm constantly thinking about how do I communicate this in a way that is clear, that is simple, that is emotive, that speaks to the soul. You know, and I get criticised sometimes by people on the left that's like, Gary's a populist, Gary oversimplifies his argument. Yes, obviously, because that's somebody has to do that. You know what I mean? You don't fucking win the public with 75-page PDFs. You know what I mean? Like, obviously, people need to be on YouTube and Instagram and Facebook and with emotional passion. And you know, when I say don't point at people and call people dickheads, right? And we're speaking about this in the green room. What should you do, right? I'm me. I do my thing from the position I'm in. Like, who are you? What is an authentic way for you? I don't want you all to be Gary Stevenson. You know what I mean? This guy, like, talking, he's not exactly parroting like word for word what I'm saying. He's watching it. He's learning. He's understanding. He's speaking it back in his own words from his own experience in a way that's going to resonate with his community. You know, and, you know, I'm not from here. You know what I mean? I don't know what life is like on the ground in Newcastle the way you people do. You know what I mean? So it's you need to feel it, you need to understand it and feel it, and also, crucially, have some compassion, understanding for the people you want to reach, the people you speak to, and just how do we reach them, how do we communicate, and that's what I think about every day, and I would like you guys to think about it too, so you can help build these things in your communities.
How do you respond to the idea that a wealth tax will result in all the millionaires and billionaires and wealth creators, as they're often called, fleeing the country? Yeah,
a very, very, very common question. So it's important to understand that this is not taxing income, this is taxing wealth, right? So it's not about taxing your salary. So if we were to tax, doctors, most doctors could move and do their work in another country. But if you want to tax somebody who's worth like £1 billion, £1 billion is assets, right? You own assets, you own government debt, you own land, you own buildings, you own property. If you leave the country, the assets are still there. I think the best example is Roman Abramovich, right? When the Ukraine war started, suddenly the government was like, oh, we're gonna confiscate Roman Abramovich's wealth. And Roman Abramovich was gone, right? He's in Moscow, right? You know, what does Roman Abramovich own? Chelsea fucking football club. You know what I mean? Like, it's in Chelsea. Yeah, you can fucking tax it, right? And the money comes from the guys who go to Chelsea football club. So I think, you know, we need to be talking about, okay, if these guys leave, then can we tax them on their British assets? And I think we can. You know, China does it. You know, I think we currently have this system where basically we make the tax voluntary. It's stupid. You know, I can own like everyone in here's fucking mortgage, and I can live in the fucking Bahamas, and these guys pay their mortgage to me, right? And I spend whatever 90 days here or whatever. And then when the government comes to me and says, oh, well, you know, the whole of fucking Newcastle's paying you their mortgage, I say, well, actually, I live in the Bahamas, so fuck off. Like, China wouldn't allow it. You know, and they don't allow it, right? Like, why do we allow it? Because the fucking politicians are fucking millionaires, basically. You know, we're not talking about taxing working people. We're talking about taxing assets. Those assets exist here in this country. It's your houses, it's your mortgage, it's your businesses, it's your natural resources. We can tax it. Other countries do.
So I want to read this one. It says, what are your thoughts on normal people owning residential property to rent out for profit? Is there a number of properties owned where this becomes immoral? And the reason I wanted to ask you that question is because quite often when we're talking about extreme wealth, I think there's a feeling, certainly on the left, that like there shouldn't be billionaires, they shouldn't exist. And actually the fact that they have this much wealth is kind of immoral. You said earlier, you know, you're not communist. Where is that line? What do you think this is a helpful line for the left to be taking, talking about the morality? Isn't that just also finger wagging, calling people dickheads? I'm just interested in how you perceive this kind of ethical, economic relationship.
You know what? I think this is...
And then I will ask you about
to be honest, all right, you know, I think this is a bit of a tricky one. So the first thing to say is, a guy who has 2 or 3 properties and rents out 1 or 2 of them, these guys are not billionaires in the vast majority of cases, right? They're probably richer than your average person, but they're not billionaires. And for a lot of people, especially people from working class backgrounds, this is really the only form of wealth accumulation that they know. Most people who come from poor backgrounds, the only way they know to accumulate wealth is the buying of property. You know, so some of these guys, a lot of these people who do this they might be tradesmen, you know, they could be fucking plumbers, they could be builders, or maybe their fucking nan died and left them their fucking house, you know what I mean? And we live in a world where if you don't have any family wealth, you are kind of fucked, right? So you turn around to people who, from a working class background, in a world where if you don't have any family wealth, you're fucked. And the only form of family wealth accumulation they know is buying houses. And we basically say, sorry, you are not allowed to be financially secure. And especially in the case where your messenger might be somebody who went to an elite university, who is from London, who sounds and looks a bit posh, maybe their dad's got a pension fund. You know what I mean? I think there's a little bit of hypocrisy there. A lot of people, you know, I'm from London and people want to be bankers. You know, outside of London, people might think that's less achievable. Probably the only financially secure people they know will be people who own 2 or 3 properties. And that's what they aspire to. And I think it's stupid, to be honest. I think it divides the working class. You know, and I know some people say they're not working class. These guys are, you know, in this part of the world, in this part of the country, these people can own 2 or 3 properties and not even be a millionaire. You know what I mean? Can we just stop kicking the shit out of each other and start focusing on the real enemy, which is the super rich? I think that would be wiser.
Just as a sort of side note, because obviously we both grew up in working class communities and families. What was your thing growing up that you thought made you rich? Mine was a dishwasher.
If you had a piano in your house. You had a piano in your house. Some people have pianos in their houses.
Pianos in their houses?
For me, I thought that was fun. But then I realised now it's almost totally unrelated. It just means that your mum can play piano. But when I was a kid, I was like, piano in your house? I'm not even talking about grand piano, you know, like stand-up piano.
I remember...
Or the big thing is, I'll tell you this.
Yeah, go on.
Did you ever go to someone's house in school and they've got a staircase that...
What's that? What are you doing there?
They've got a staircase that splits. Have you ever seen that? Staircase that splits.
What, at the top?
In the middle.
What? What do you mean?
You can be on a staircase and you've got choices to make. You know? On a staircase.
I don't think I've ever seen that.
I remember the first time I saw that, I thought, fuck, you know.
I had this one, and we will get back to the question. I had one when I was in sixth form college, and I went to this sixth form college where if you were from like the East London boroughs, you had to achieve a certain like whatever. But then if you were from the more Essex boroughs, which is where it was based, like the catchment was different anyway. So suddenly I found myself with all these like nerdy Asian kids who had come in from like East London with these like sort of, you know, plumbers who did quite well, and kids from these big houses. And I just remember being at someone's house looking for a microwave, and the mum comes in and was like, "Oh no, darling, we keep the microwave in the garage." And
microwave in the garage?
Oh yeah, so it's not seen. And I was like, posh, that's money.
That's just...